it's amazing how sometimes the Lord can give you confirmation on some things. And, if I had a sermon title today, is, are you living in a bubble? Are you living in a bubble? Amen. And of course, we know you're living, we're all kind of living in a coronavirus bubble. We're living in a bubble. We're living in a quarantine to a certain extent. So we know about that bubble. But even before the coronavirus bubble, some of us, I submit to you today, we're living in a bubble. Amen. And I want to share with you, it's kind of funny. It might be only me and John Reed to get this message today, because we both kind of grew up with Marvel Comics, and there's a Marvel comic show that's on television, Disney Plus TV, and it's called WandaVision. Amen. And in this story, the first three, and I had just given up on the show because the show was so bad. It was so bad at first. Amen. And Brother John posted something that made me want to I think it was Brother John that posted something that made me want to check it out, because the show was so bad at first, because it's basically, it looked like it was a 1950s sitcom at first. Amen. And I was like, why are they doing this with a comic? Like, why are you gonna turn a comic book show into like I Love Lucy? I don't know what you're doing there. What you doing? And what it turned out with, they have this one character that is so powerful that she's gone through so much pain in her life. Her name is Wanda, and she's gone through so much pain in her life. What she's done is she's turned the whole city that surrounded her, she turned it into a bubble of sorts, where everything in that city adapts and performs to the reality that she wants to create for herself. Amen. Everything within this whole city. So all the people within that city are captured, and they're all having to live within this bubble of this powerful woman by the name of Wanda. And Wanda has turned this whole city into a city that moves and acts just like she wants them to act. And everything, and you have to understand where this comes from, where this bubble comes from. Just like all bubbles, just like some of your bubbles, the bubble comes from a source of your pain. Amen. Because after you go through enough pain, after you go through enough drama, after you go through enough hurt, after you go through enough heartache, you know what we create? We create bubbles. Amen. And you create those bubbles because you want, it's almost a source of dealing with it's a source of dealing with the post-traumatic stress that you've had to deal with. Because you've had to deal with, some of you have had to deal with husbands who beat on you. Some of you have had to deal with the loss of family members. Some of you have had to deal with the loss of children. Some of you have had to deal with drug addictions and alcohol addiction. Some of you have had to deal with some heavy things. And as you've had to deal with these things, you know what you create? You create a bubble. Because you realize how the world is. You realize how rough the world is. You realize how tough the world is. You realize that there's so much pain in this world that you try to create a small little world where no one can ever do that to you again. I'm watching WandaVision, and I'm seeing the lives of many Christians that I know today. My father was a man who went through 2 wars. And I think besides going through the Korean War that he used to have nightmares about, despite going through the Vietnam War, there was no war like the one that he waged in his own house, because his first wife was someone that had some issues. She was dealing with some issues herself. And my father dealt with his first wife who hurt him in a way that I don't think anyone else has ever hurt him before. Amen. So what did my dad do? He created a bubble. Amen. He created a bubble where, everything in this house I control. Amen. And matter of fact, you can't get in this house unless I control you. And guess what? Tony, I want you to, you can't go and play like other kids. Amen. Tony, you're on a restriction. You can't be like other kids because I put you in this bubble because I know how awful and how rough it is out there. I've been hurt, Tony. So guess what? I don't want you to leave this bubble. I know a lot of people who create bubbles. Amen. We create bubbles because we've been hurt outside of our bubbles. Amen. We create bubbles where we watch news not for information, but for affirmation. We pick the channels that are going to feed us what we want to hear. Oh, we pick bubbles. We got some bubbles going on. And God sent me today to bust your bubble.